The millionaire left, his fiancée with triplets. Years later, they faced each other in court. Gregory had built a life most could only dream of: wealth, power, influence. As a rising star in real estate, his name was synonymous with success. But there was a part of his past he never spoke about, a chapter of his life he had torn out and buried deep. Her name was Aisha. She had been his everything once, his love, his anchor, his future. They had planned a life together, a home, a family. But when the moment of truth arrived, when Aisha lay in a hospital bed preparing to bring their children into the world, Gregory made a choice that would haunt him forever. The pressure from his family, the looming threat of scandal, the fear of commitment, it all piled onto him like an avalanche. He convinced himself that severing ties was the only way to protect his future. He told Aisha he was sorry, and then he left. Aisha never saw him again. But 8 years later, fate had other plans. Aisha had no time for bitterness. She had 3 boys, Miles, Reggie, and Devin, to care for. She worked endlessly, balancing multiple jobs just to keep the roof over their heads. Office assistant in the mornings, house cleaner in the afternoons, and studying online late into the night. There was no luxury in her world, only survival. People urged her to track Gregory down, to demand child support, to make him take responsibility. But Aisha was fueled by something stronger than anger. She didn't need his money. She would do it alone. Meanwhile, Gregory's empire flourished. His face graced business magazines. He attended high society galas, shaking hands with politicians and moguls. The world saw him as a visionary. No one knew about the woman he had left behind. No one knew about the children he had never met, until the day he saw a photograph. It was a simple image on social media. Aisha, standing outside a modest apartment building, smiling. Beside her stood 3 identical boys, their bright eyes filled with a joy that twisted something deep inside him. They looked just like him. A cold weight settled in his stomach. He had pushed this truth aside for years, but now, staring at their faces, he couldn't ignore it anymore. It wasn't just guilt, fear that he had built his entire life on a foundation of cowardice. But Gregory wasn't ready to face his past, so he shoved the feelings down and returned to his world of boardrooms and contracts. But fate was patient, and fate was about to force his hand. Aisha's world came crashing down with a single letter. Her apartment building was being bought out. The tenants were being forced out. She would have to leave the home she had fought so hard to keep, and the man behind it all, Gregory. She discovered his name in the official documents, confirming what the neighbors had whispered, that the real estate mogul spearheading the project was none other than the man who had abandoned her. Fury surged through her veins. It was one thing for him to leave, to pretend she and the boys didn't exist, but to take their home, to uproot them like they were nothing. She refused to be silent. Aisha sought legal advice. A community lawyer encouraged her to file an injunction, to fight the eviction. But when Gregory's firm countered with a legal challenge, the fight escalated into something neither of them had expected: a full-blown court battle. Gregory saw her name in the legal filings, and suddenly, the past he had tried so hard to forget was staring him in the face. The tenants he had been prepared to evict weren't just strangers, they were his family. The courtroom was suffocating. On one side, Gregory sat in his tailored suit, his legal team flanking him like armor. On the other, Aisha stood with her pro bono lawyer, her spine straight, her resolve unshakable. She had kept the boys away from this nightmare, shielding them from a father who had never once tried to see them, but she knew they deserved the truth. Judge Harriet Patterson, a sharp-eyed woman with decades of experience, watched the tension crackle between them. She asked the question that shifted the entire case. Is it true that you are the biological father of these children? Gregory hesitated. The weight of the press, the cameras, the reporters scribbling notes, it was all crushing down on him. Yes, he admitted, voice strained. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Aisha stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Your Honor, this man left me alone in a hospital bed, pregnant with triplets. He never sent $1, never made a call. And now he's here to take the only home my children have ever known. Gregory flinched. He had expected anger, but hearing it so plainly, seeing the way her hands trembled, the way her jaw tightened, it gutted him. His attorneys tried to argue that business was business, but Gregory had no knowledge Aisha lived in the building. But Judge Patterson wasn't impressed. Fatherhood isn't a technicality, Mr. Whitmore, she said. It's a responsibility. And then the moment Gregory had dreaded arrived. The triplets entered the courtroom. They were 8 years old, 3 sets of wide eyes, 3 heads of curly hair, 3 boys who had never seen their father in person. Gregory's composure cracked. He had built his empire on control, on calculated decisions. But nothing had prepared him for this. For the first time in his life, he felt small. The final arguments came swiftly. Aisha's lawyer made it clear, evicting a mother and 3 children, especially when the landlord was their estranged father, was unconscionable. More than that, they were filing for overdue child support. Gregory's lawyers fumbled, insisting the business and personal matters were separate, but the damage was done. Judge Patterson took a long pause before delivering her verdict. The development on this property is halted indefinitely. Mr. Whitmore, you are ordered to provide financial support for your children. Gregory barely heard the rest. His mind was spinning, his heart beat erratic. This wasn't just about money or real estate anymore. It was about the children he had abandoned. Outside the courtroom, Gregory approached Aisha cautiously. Cameras were still flashing, but for a moment, they were alone. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice raw. Aisha studied him, searching for sincerity. "If you come back into their lives, you do it fully. Not for the headlines. For them." A month later, the media had moved on, but the real story was just beginning. Gregory's attorneys arranged a settlement, ensuring Aisha and the boys had a stable home. But more than that, Gregory began showing up. The visits were awkward at first, filled with hesitation and uncertainty. But over time, something changed. The boys, cautious but curious, began to let him in. They played basketball at the park. They asked him questions. And one evening, as Aisha watched from a distance, she saw something she never expected. Gregory, kneeling on the pavement, teaching his sons how to dribble. A second chance had begun. Was Gregory's redemption enough? Should Aisha have given him another chance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.